Okay. So what we did yesterday, in the last class rather, was pumping lemma, which is a method which allows us to prove that some languages are not regular, right? And I hope you have had a chance to look at the slide, but the key property that we relied on was the following. Okay, the key property that we relied on is given in this last two bullets. You know, it's given here. Suppose we have a DFA with n states and we consider a long string W, which in fact has a long subword in it called y. So W can be split into three parts x, y, z such that y is long. Now this is any possible such y. You can choose an arbitrary y inside W which is long. Given any such y, you know, this y will have a pump in it. That is what is the property of an n-state DFA. Right? And what does it mean to say that this y will have a pump in it? This y itself can be broken into three parts, UVW, such that the run of the automaton on this string W has the form from S, you know, on X you will go to some state Q1. Now from Q1 on U, you will go to Q2. Then this pump V will occur, and on the pump from Q2 you will return back to Q2. And then you will do the remaining part of Y, the W part, and go to some state Q3, and then for the remaining part of the string W you will go to F. Okay, so basically what this property says is that given any word W which has a subword Y in it which is long, that Y will have a pump V inside it. I mean, there may be many occurrences of pump in it, but there will be at least one occurrence of pump because some state Q2 will have to repeat during the execution of that Y part. Right? And because this V is a pump, we can repeat it any number of times. So, of course, this run shows that the whole string X, U, V, W, Z belongs to the language. But because, you know, the part V, the pump part V takes you from Q2 to Q2, we can repeat it any number of times. So we can have a longer run, let's say like this. From S, you go to Q1 on X, then from Q1 on U, you go to Q2. On V, you come to Q2 again. Then you can repeat this V second time, right? So now you will get word X, U, V, V, W, Z. V can be repeated any number of times. In fact, V can be omitted. And from Q2, you can directly go to Q3 on W. So basically, all these words will also be in the language. So if, you know, given any word W, which has a long subword Y in it, and you can choose which Y it is, such a Y will have a pump. And that pump can be repeated arbitrarily many number of times. This is the property of finite state automata. Now I hope you studied the slides and are clear about it. Because of this, we get this method, this pumping lemma in the contrapositive form, you know, which allows us to check whether a language is regular or not. So for example, you've got a language of the form a to the power b to the power k, where k is some constant greater than equal to 0. So basically all words where number of a's is equal to number of b's and b's follow a, right? This language we claim is not regular. In order to prove that, we will use this pumping lemma. And how will we use this pumping lemma? We will use this we will convert this pumping lemma into a kind of game. So you are given L. We are trying to show that L is not regular, right? We play a game with the daemon. Since there are these for all quantifiers, the daemon will be in charge of choosing the values, you know, which are adversarial to us. He will choose such values that, you know, our argument doesn't work. And our argument will be that, you know, in a long string, there is no pump. That is what we are trying to prove. Whereas daemon is trying to prove that there is always a pump in the long part. So what we will do is, given this L, what language we'll put? Demon claims that there is a DFA of n states for that language. He doesn't show us the DFA, but he claims there is a DFA, right? Okay. So the daemon claims it's a there is a L is regular and he chooses an N because he knows the DFA, he'll choose its number of states. So you say that, oh, if it's a DFA, there is a string in the language with a long subword in it, which cannot be pumped. So this is a non-pumpable long substring. And such things cannot happen in a regular language. So you try to give a counter example to it being regular by giving a long word XYZ with the Y part which is of length greater than or equal to N. And you claim that there is no pump inside Y, right? That is no substring there which can be repeated arbitrarily many times something. Daemon says, so you choose this XYZ, suitable. So you come up with this, right? At that point, the daemon says, no, this Y that you have identified is pumpable. In fact, this is how I break Y into UVW such that V is the pump. So daemon chooses the pump V, but then you say that, look, daemon is wrong. There is some I such that this pump string X V repeated I times followed by WZ is actually not in the language for some choice of I that you choose. So you choose this I. This should be in blue. Huh? This is your choice. So you see all these for all quantifier variables are chosen by the daemon and their exist variables are chosen by you. Okay, this is how you play the game. And if you have a way of choosing these variables for any move of the daemon, you have an answering move, then you have one. And the way in which you choose the your moves is called a strategy. That is, strategy is given any play of daemon, you have an answering play, such that you always win. And if you can always win, then you have shown that the language is not regular. So is the outline of the argument clear? We will follow this argument on one example, and so this will become more clear. We did this example yesterday, but I'm going to repeat this again. What do I have? Okay. So I'm going to repeat this again. Okay. So what we are trying to show is that a raised to, let me make it the pen thinner, b raised to k, where k is greater than or equal to 0 is not regular. Okay, this is what we want to do. You will be asked many questions about how to do this. Now, once you do a couple of examples, the pattern will become clear to you how to do it. It may sound complicated. So we play this game with daemon. So what does daemon do? Daemon chooses N. That is his first move, right? He claims it is regular. This language is regular and he chooses a number N. Right? The contrapositive form of regular lemma says that for all N, if you can prove this property, then it is not regular. So we tell the daemon, choose any N, and I will show you that, this property will hold. So daemon says, okay, I give you some number N. And since you have to be prepared for any value N, you use this symbolic. So N represents any arbitrarily large number, right? So daemon chooses N. In response, what do you have to do? You choose the following string, epsilon dot a to the power n, b to the power n, belonging to the language. Why is this the case? Because this is the x part, this is the y part, and this is the z part. And you can see that the length of y is greater than or equal to n, because it contains n occurrences of, sequence of n is, right? So you have chosen this string, long string, a raised to n, b raised to n for the given n by the daemon, which is in the language, and you have chosen this a raised to n part as my pumpable part y, or non-pumpable part y. So I claim that this y does not have a pump, which is why I have called it y. So is the strategy clear? You choose not only a word in the language, you choose a part of that word which is long and claim that it does not have a pump in it. Daemon says nonsense, it has a pump, and I will show you how to pump it. So daemon will show you pump. Now for any possible way of splitting this y, that the daemon chooses, you should have an answer showing that it is not the pump. So we will choose an arbitrary splitting of y into three parts such that the middle part is a pump. So daemon will actually split this y part into three parts, and I will show it like this. So daemon says that you have, of course, this string epsilon before, and then this y part I will break into a raised to j followed by a raised to k followed by a raised to l. Since I have only n occurrences of a, I can split this into three parts, where the first part, so this is what I call as u, this is what I call as v, and this is what I call as my string w. This is my x, and then I have got b raised to n, which is my z part. This, of course, is the original string. Daemon has now broken it into three parts. This a raised to n is broken into a raised to j, a raised to k, and a raised to l, with the property that j plus k plus l equal to n. Of course, because originally n occurrences of a will be broken into this part, and k is greater than 0, because pump should always be non-epsilon, right? That is our requirement. Go to the previous this thing. You choose this xyz, and the daemon chooses breaks this non-pumpable part into three parts, such that he claims that v is a pump, and the pump should not have length 0, right? So this is the way in which daemon splits. Now, for any values of j, k, and l which satisfy this, you have to show that this string is not pumpable, right? So what do? Your move is written in red. What do? You say that I choose to repeat the pump 0 number of times, right? So choose I equal to 0. So basically, my pumping lemma says that this string, if the language is regular, then what does the pumping lemma say? I will draw that in black. Pumping lemma will say if the language was regular, and if indeed this v part was a pump, then a raised to j, then a raised to k repeated arbitrary number of times, I times a raised to l, b raised to n will also belong to the language for all I, right? That was the if the language was regular, this property would have been true. But you are trying to show, daemon has chosen this j, k, and l such that this property will hold for all I. What you do is you answer by choosing an I, which will not make this property hold. This property in black, should not hold. That is what you are trying to show. You are trying to show that this is not true. So what is a suitable I that you can choose? Can anybody answer? We can take I equal to 0. So if we take I equal to 0, what is the new string we get? We get x as before, epsilon. A raised to j cannot be touched. This a raised to k is now repeated 0 times. So what you get is a raised to k repeated 0 times, and then a raised to l and b raised to n. This is the string you are saying. A raised to k repeated 0 times will give you epsilon here. So what you will get is a string epsilon followed by a raised to j, followed by a raised to l, followed by b raised to n. So in this string, a occurs j plus l times. The number of k occurrences of a have been omitted because we decided to pump this down, right? So we have number, but we know that k is greater than 0 and j plus k plus l is equal to n. So now my j plus l will be less than n. Hence, the number of a's in this modified string will be less than the number of b's, and hence this will not belong to the language. Whereas daemon claimed that no matter which I you chose, the modified string should have been in the language. So daemon is wrong, and we have won this for any choice of JKL subject to these conditions that daemon could have chosen. And hence we have shown that this language is not regular, right? So this is the way in which pumping lemma works. So you have to be prepared to work for any choice of n that daemon gives. In response to that choice of n, you can choose a string of your choice from the language, and then you can also offer him some long subword which you claim is non-pumpable. The daemon will try to split this y in all possible ways such that the middle part will be a pump. You have to argue that for any such split, the middle part is not a pump. That is what you have argued. So this is the This is the method. Any questions here? Any questions here? So let's go over the steps again. In order to show that a language is not regular, you play a game with, you are given a language L and you are claiming that the language is not regular. So you come up with a strategy. For every move of daemon, you will have answering move, which will show that, pumping does not occur, right? So daemon chooses an N because he claims it's regular. He chooses an N. You choose a word in the language of your choice based on this N, which has a subpart Y, which is long. You choose that subpart also. In our example, daemon chose N, and we chose this long word A raised to N, B raised to N. So N occurrences of A, N occurrences of B, and we chose for non-pumpable part this part A raised to N. So this was all our choice. Okay, now daemon says, no, you are wrong. This Y has a pump in it, right? That is what he should show. Because for any long substring, there should be a pump if the language was regular. So daemon says this also has a pump. So for that, he will say that, look, I will show you this is a pump. So we'll break this string Y into 3 parts, UVW. And for any UVW split that daemon gives, you have to be able to show that that V that he chose was not pumpable. That is, there is some I such that this holds, right? This is what we did. And in our case, we chose I equal to 0, right? What would have happened if we had chosen I equal to 2? Would the argument have worked also? What would happen if I was equal to 2? So can is Arvind there? Can Arvind answer? Yes, if you choose I equal to 2, what is the string you will get?
I mean, we'll have that A part 2L. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. A part 2K.
Right, A part 2K. So you will have string A raised to J followed by A raised to K followed by another A raised to K, right? Because you chose to repeat that V part twice. And then you will have A raised to L and then B raised to N. Now, does this string belong to the language?
No, because J plus 2K plus L is not equal to N.
Right. So this also does not belong to. So this could also have been chosen as an I. There are many I's which will allow us to show that the string is not pumpable, right? So this is how you apply the pumping lemma. Exactly. One more example. And with that we will end. So I have a language which says that so our alphabet is AB and we take all words of the form WW. That is, they can be split in the middle such that the first part is same as the second part. So what are the kind of words which will be in my language? I'll have words like ABAB, or I'll have word like AAB, AAB, right? All these words are in the language, right? Because they can be split somewhere in the middle so that the first part is same as the second part, right? So is the language clear to you? Now, is this regular? Do you think this is regular? So Uday, do you think this is regular? We have Uday Gohil here, right? Hi, Uday. Okay, Uday is not reachable. Abhi, do you want to give a try? Do you think this language is regular or not?
Sir, I think it is regular.
What kind of automaton will recognize this? You have to make sure that the earlier half is same as the later half.
Yes, sir. So it's like you can pump the two halves, right? Because they are repeating.
No, to show that a language is regular, you have to have a DFA which will recognize all such words.
Yes.
So can you, somehow you will have to remember the earlier half and match it with the second half, right?
Yes, sir.
So
okay, no. 1 second, I'll tell you. Uh, if we assume x to be something, yeah, because sir, x will remain the same, no? So
Yeah,
your
but in the finite state automaton, where will you remember that x?
yeah,
Suppose
that
you
is
see
there.
there is an intuitive difficulty. See, your
It won't
automaton will
be
have
a
only n states.
BFSS.
Suppose your W was much longer than n, right?
Hmm.
So this was a long subword. Somehow you will not be able to remember the full W. And in the following part, so basically we are saying that this language will consist of two parts, X and Y, such that firstly the length of X is equal to length of Y, right?
Hmm.
And X and Y are exactly the same string.
Ha.
But X can be arbitrarily long.
Yes, sir.
So suppose you have scanned the X part, you can only remember finite amount of information about X, right?
Yes.
And then, in the Y part, suppose we change, the part that we have not remembered, then, somehow we will not be able to detect that X is not equal to Y. We may
Sir,
fallaciously,
if we have declared that mod of x equal to mod of y,
yes,
in that case, then we can
no.
because a comma b
So
whole
suppose,
bar x
suppose,
for
suppose my,
y.
suppose my string X is
Hmm.
it. Suppose my automaton has got 1000 states, right? And I choose a string 10,000 times A followed by B as my X, huh? And my string Y as what? A to the power 9999, 1 A less followed by B. Now what happens is when I scan this string, I cannot remember whether there were 10,000 A's or because I have only 1000 states available.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
cannot count it. And then they will differ, no?
Yes.
So by the time I come here, I don't have enough information to remember this string. I don't have information to remember how many A's occurred, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So if you argue like this, you can think that it is not regular. Now the way to make this argument more formal is the pumping lemma. Okay. So we'll apply pumping lemma to show that this is not regular, right? And for showing that this is not regular, we play the game with the daemon. So what does the daemon do? First move is the move of the daemon. He
And
says that no, this is regular and
it,
I have an end state automaton. We had chosen that to be 1000, but
yeah,
daemon chooses n, right? In
greater than
response to that, what do we choose? You will choose a string something like this. So what string will you choose?
epsilon dot
Ha,
uh,
absolutely. You are right. So actually you can also write it as x is equal to epsilon, y equal to a to the power. How many times you want to repeat n?
um
You can repeat it
I
n times also, or n plus 1 times,
yeah,
Yeah. So
yes,
I'll repeat it n followed by b. This is what, because I want to know which is the first part,
yes,
right?
sir.
And z I will choose as a to the
B
power
to the
n, b.
power.
Same string
Okay.
repeated. So
Yes, sir.
basically, this is same as saying that we will split it into epsilon, a to the power n followed by b, and a to the power n followed by b, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This is my xyz part. This is how I split it. And I give this y as a non-pumpable part to the daemon, right? Okay, now somebody else. Uh, do we have Parth here? Hi, Parth. Is Parth here? Okay, Parth is not there. You got Piyush here? Don't worry. I mean, I'm with you. We'll do this together. Piyush is here? No. What about Arvind? Arvind here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Arvind. So in yours, next step is daemon step. What will daemon do? Daemon will split this y part into 3 strings, right?
Yes.
UVW, such
I
that the
mean,
middle part is pumpable. And you have to be prepared for any possible way in which he splits this, right?
yes.
So we will here consider 2 cases. One case is that B occurs inside this V part, right? So case one is that you will have split which looks like this. The original epsilon was as it was. It will be some a raised to k, and then you will have a raised to L followed by B. This is the Y part, and then there is epsilon for the Z part. So Demon, in one case, one possible way in which Demon can split this string Y is that here, for the U part, he will do a k number of times. Then in the V part, he will do the remaining A's including 0. This k could be equal to n. So here my constraint is that, but he will do the B in the V part, and in the W part there is nothing, right? And then this is followed, of course, by a raised to n B, right? So Demon chooses to split it like this, right? This V part is what he chooses, this V part to include the last B. Okay, that is one case. So what would you do?
So now I'll just have to show that if you repeat V arbitrary number of, or not arbitrary, but rather I need to show that exists one V par I
Right.
such that
It will not be in the language. So what I do you choose?
So in this case, if I choose 2 itself, it will not be
Okay,
equal.
I equal to 2 you choose. So V part is repeated twice. So in the earlier part there are 2 B's. In the second part there is only 1 B, and they can never be equal, right?
Yes.
So this will not be in the language. So this is how you have shown you have won against the Demon. It could not be pumped. But this is not the only way of breaking this string, right? There is another case, no?
Where you'll have B in as part of W and only
Yes,
A part.
exactly. So you break this into a raised to k, then this part is a raised to L, and then the remaining part is a raised to KL J. I'll put this as J. Sorry, the indices are going wrong. Followed by B, right? And then this is followed by a raised to NB, where what do you have? K plus L plus J is equal to N, and L is greater than 0. Now the pumping argument is same as in the previous case, a raised to n, b raised to n. This L you can pump either 0 times or 2 times or 3 times. You will show that the first and the second part will not be equal, right?
Yes, sir. It's
So
exactly.
this is how you are able to show that this works, and this you could do because you chose this convenient string inside the language. So remember, always try to choose a convenient string inside the language. For some strings this pumping may be very difficult to show, but you choose a convenient string and a convenient part of the string where you show there is no pump. Okay, so this is the freedom that you have. Okay, so you have answered the Demon by two. In both the cases you have won against the Demon, and hence this language is not regular. Okay, so I think this is the pumping lemma, and you will be asked to show that many such languages are non-regular. So I will choose another language, WR, where WR denotes, or let me say reverse of W. This is the notation that we have been using. W followed by reverse of W, right? Where W belongs to AB star. Okay, so the string can be broken into 2 equal parts such that the first part is W and the second part is the reverse of that word. So this will consist of things like ABBA, because you can break it into middle. It will also consist of AAAA, because it can be A is reverse of AA. So all such words will be in the language. Now let me ask Pooja, is this regular, you think? Hello Pooja, are you there? Okay, we've lost Pooja. Rohit? Hi Rohit.
Yes, sir.
So give me your opinion. Is this language regular, you think? Hi Rohit, we lost you. Yeah. Tell me. So this lecture is partly tutorial. We are solving such examples. Okay, you will be asked to solve such examples in the long answer part. If it's regular, then you got to, give a DFA or an NFA or epsilon NFA for this language. If it is not regular, you have to formulate a pumping lemma kind of argument. You have to show that there is a long word inside this language with a long subword where there is no, which is not pumpable, where there is no pump inside. So one of the two has to be the case, right? So Rohit, do you think this is regular? If you followed the earlier part of the argument where we showed that this WW was not regular, could we have similar intuition working here? Okay, maybe the connection with Rohit seems to be gone. Can somebody else help? Suraj, you want to have a try?
Yes, sir. So,
do you think this is regular?
no, sir, it doesn't look to be regular because
Okay.
W can be of any arbitrary length, and
Right.
remembering that won't be possible in a finite state automata.
Right. So we will prove it using pumping lemma, right? So suppose daemon chooses n. Now, which convenient string you want to choose?
We can choose the similar in the last case, like x
Right.
as x as epsilon, y as a power n b, and z as b a power n.
A power n b and z as
B a power n.
a power n, right? And we can similar ask the daemon to choose a pump within this part, and same the kind of two cases we considered will make this unequal, right? In the reverse, right?
Yes, sir.
So you are right. You are right. It is very similar intuition, and I grant you that this is by a similar example. This will not be equal. Now I'll set you some homework assignments where you will be asked to show some languages unequal. In Cozen book, there is a complicated example. Out of interest, you may study it. It basically says the following this thing I, such that I is a prime. Right? This language is not regular, he tries to show. That is a repeated I times where I is a prime number, collection of all such words, over the single letter alphabet is not regular. And he somehow applies pumping lemma to show this. So if you are interested, you can study it, but you don't have to. Okay. So with that, I will close the discussion on pumping lemma. Pumping lemma is one way in which you can show that the language is not regular. Unfortunately, it does not work for every non-regular languages. There are non-regular languages where every long part will have a pump. So this pumping lemma is sufficient for showing non-regularity, but it is not necessary. So it's a slightly weak method. There are stronger versions of pumping lemma which are both necessary and sufficient, but they are a bit complicated and we won't go into it. Okay, but there is one more method for checking whether a language is regular or not, and it's a perfect method. Okay, so that is what we are going to do, and that method is called the Mahil-Nerod theorem. So let's try and do that.
This problem that you have shared from Cozen, I mean, if you use a little bit of number theory behind prime numbers, you'll be able to solve it. Right?
Yeah, that's what he does. So try to do it yourself if you like. Otherwise, refer to Cozen. You are right. It uses a bit of number theory.
Okay.
Right? See, prime numbers are not ultimately periodic. That is, there is no number, there are no number m and p such that for any n larger than m, we have the following property, right? N belongs to the set. A set is called L is ultimately periodic, UP, if and only if there exists n and m such that for all n greater, or there exists, I'm sorry, m and p, such that for all n greater than n, n belongs to L if and only if n plus p belongs to L. In fact, in n plus kp, where for all k. So you know, after some point, the set becomes periodic with period p, and set of primes is not periodic. This is what he uses in order to show that you know, this language is not there. But all that is out of interest, little out of scope. So let's not. I need to move on to the next this thing. So let me do one thing. Let me save this as. Yeah, let me save this and let me export this to PDF, which I will call as T6 and 3, so that I can post this to you people. Okay, this is done. And we can get out of this. Okay, I want to start on a new topic, which gives one more method of showing that languages are not regular. Now, this part of the course is a little bit abstract, but not difficult. Okay, I mean, you will have to concentrate a little bit, but it's not difficult. So let's try and do that. I have got here myhill.pdf. Yes. Okay, so let me. Oops, that's not what I want. I want to start it in journal. Yes. No, that also doesn't work. View zoom. I have to set the zoom to 230. That doesn't work either. Okay, that should work. That also doesn't work. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so and the theorem, the method that we are going to do is based on a theorem called the Myhill-Nerode. Nerode is somebody called Anil Nerode, very famous formal language theory person, theorem. Okay, so that is the topic that we are trying to do now. Okay, and it's a little bit abstract, but fun. So slides are not in the order in which I want to present this. So I want to present to you some ideas. Suppose we are given a DFA recognizing language R, you know. So we will always denote the language of, that we are interested in as R, right? And we have a DFA A for R. Okay. Now this DFA, originally remember, given a DFA, we had set up equivalence between its states in order to minimize it. Forget that. Don't confuse what we are doing with that at all. What we are going to do is we are going to set up equivalence between words of an automaton. So, and what I say is that given this DFA A, word X and Y are A equivalent if from the start state, if you do X, and from the start state you do Y, you wind up in the same state. In that case, I call word X and Y is equivalent. I'm not equating two states, I'm equating two words. So is the notion of definition of this machine equivalence clear? This is called machine equivalence. Equivalence under machine A, DFA A, right? So this is how I define two words to be equivalent. Let me give an example. So suppose I have this automaton. We will have this automaton many times. This automaton. So you know which automaton I'm coming up with. and all letters are A, and the states are called Q0, Q1, Q2, Q3. Now, what is the language this recognizes? So, Pooja, what is the language of this automaton? This should be easy. Sejal? Hello? I think people are leaving the computer on and going away. Okay, Uday? What is the language of this automaton?
A. Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
A and then A star.
Yes.
I'm in A and 4A.
Okay, let's write down. A is in the language. Then what else is in the language?
A. 5 times A.
5 times A is there, but what about 3 times A? That takes you to this final state.
Yeah.
Right? Etc. Now my claim is I have got this sigma star, which is basically A star, right? Number of A's repeated arbitrary many number of times. I am saying the two words from that are equivalent if they take you to the same state. So my claim is that this automaton is called capital A, right? A is capital A equivalent to A. Why is that the case? If you start with the start state Q0, delta hat of Q0 on A will give you which state? Q1. Delta hat of starting state on the longer word A will also take you to Q1. So since both A and A took you to the same state, they are A equivalent, right? This is easy. So is A equivalent to A? What do you think, Rohit?
Sir.
Sorry, can you repeat, sir?
I'm asking whether the string consisting of a single A is equivalent to double A.
No, sir.
Okay, it's not. Very good. What about A and what about epsilon and 4 A's?
Yes, sir.
It is equivalent, right? What about A and 2 A's? Epsilon and 2 A's?
No, sir.
No, right. So you know the notion of equivalence. That's easy for you. Very good. Now, what I say is the following. Let me rub off all this. This was all practice. Now, so what happens is we have this notion of equivalences, right? And this which word is equivalent to which word. My claim is that this is an equivalence relation. That is, it is reflexive, transitive, and symmetric. You can easily see that, right? Because every word is equivalent to itself. If A is equivalent to B and B is equivalent to C, then A is equivalent to C, because A and B take you to same state and B and C also take you to same state. So A and C take you to the same state, right? So this is an equivalence relation, and it partitions the words in sigma star into classes, right? So what I have here is sigma star is the set of all words, arbitrary number of A's, and it actually partitions all the words into some equivalence classes. And the first equivalence class will have epsilon in it. It will also have A, right? Because A will take you. In fact, any multiple of 4 A's will bring you back to this state Q0. So the equivalence class, for every state, there will be one equivalence class. All the strings which take you from initial state to that state will be in its equivalence class, right? So what will be the equivalence class of epsilon? Which will so let me write here. All the strings of the form A repeated arbitrary number of times, including 0, will take you to state Q0. And so this forms one class of equivalent strings, right? Do you see that? That all the strings where you start in Q0 and end up in Q0 will be defined by this regular expression. So I think this should be clear to you. What is the equivalence class of Q1? So Rushi, you want to answer? What are the strings which will take you to Q1? Well, you can go around this loop arbitrary number of times, including 0, and then you have to do one A. So Rushi, what would be the regular expression? Well, in order to go to Q1, you have to come to Q0 arbitrary number of times. So that is given by AAAA star, right? This will bring you back to Q0, and then you do an A, you will wind up in Q1. So the equivalence class corresponding to state Q1 is given by this regular expression, right? For Q2, what will it be? Anybody? So Parth, what will be the equivalence class of strings which will bring you to Q2? Parth, have I lost you? Okay, Parth is not audible. What about Abhir?
Sir, 4 A's with the star and then 2 A's outside the star.
Correct. And similarly for Q3. So we will try and go back to somebody else. Suraj, what will be the strings which will take you to Q3?
4 A's, star, and then 3 A's.
Correct. And basically all words are covered under one of these 4 regular expressions, right? So the equivalence class of epsilon belongs to this regular expressions language, right? Equivalence class of epsilon is AAA star, right? So the sigma star is partitioned into 4 parts, one for each state, and the set of strings which take you to state Q0 is AAA star. So all the strings in AAA star are here. This will be AAA star followed by an A, and then this will be AAA star followed by AA, right? And this will be AAA star followed by AAA, right? This is the, so every machine, every DFA partition of n states. Let's say that DFA only has reachable states, right? We are only worried about reachable states. Unreachable states don't count. So partitions the set of words sigma star into n equivalence classes, where n is the number of reachable states, one class for each state by definition. So is this clear to you? This definition of equivalence and its equivalence class is clear to you? Any question here? Secondly, the language recognized by this automaton L of A, which we called as R, is actually given by all the words which take you to either Q1 or Q3. So it will be union of these two equivalence classes. So the language of the automaton will be union of some equivalence classes. Is that clear to you? Because these are all the words that take you to Q1, which is a final state, and these are all the words which take you to Q3, which is a final state. So your language is made out of union of some of those classes. It is not that your language is made out of some strings from this class and some strings from this class, some string, whole of this class corresponding to each final state has to be included. Okay, this is the structure of the language of the automaton. So we have this, and then what we can show is that this equivalence relation that we have defined, what is called the machine equivalence relation, has the following 4 properties. Basically these 4 properties. Don't worry about all the things I have written before. Just let's look at these 4 properties. First is that this is an equivalence relation. That is, it is reflexive, symmetric, and transitive. So I leave it to you to check it. I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? If you have difficulty, ask me. Okay, the most important property is property B, which says that if x is equivalent to y, that is x and y are in the same class, then if you extend x with an a and if you extend y with an a, you will get two different strings because x and y may be different. They are equivalent, but they are different. Like a and a one time and a 5 times, right? If you extend it by 1a, then you know the two strings will be different, but they will lie in the same equivalence class. Okay, this is the property of this equivalence that we have defined. So let me show it to here. What we are saying is the following, and I will draw it in black. So it says that if you pick up two possible elements from the same class, you know, two different strings, and if you extend it with same letter, let us say you extend it with letter A, then you will go here. This string extended with A will go here. This string extended with the same A will go here, but these two will be in the same class. It cannot be that if you extend this with an A, you go here, and if you extend this with the same A, you will go to some different class. That cannot happen. So this is the stability relation. You know, this equivalence relation has that property. Now, is that clear to you that that holds in our case? Because if two strings are equivalent, they will wind up in the same state. And after that, whether you do an A, you will go to some state. So XA will go to, I mean, I think this should be clear to you. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but you can check that this is true. Just remember the definition of this equivalence and then this follows. So you want me to do this proof or you are okay with it? Okay. So this property is called right congruence. It has a name. So this relation, this machine equivalence relation is a right congruence equivalence. That is, if equal parts when extended by the same string take you to the same equivalence class. So you extend this by A, it will go to same class. Maybe if you extend it to B, you will go here. You know, in our case, there is no letter B, but if there was, and hence, if you extend this X by any string, and if you extend this Y by any string, you will wind up in the same equivalence class. This is the congruence property. So, you know, firstly, you know, we have an equivalence relation and the relation is what is called right congruent. This property is called right congruence. Okay. So we have this right congruence property for this equivalence that we have defined. The third property is that if two strings are equivalent, either both are in the language or both are not in the language. So, you know, you take two equivalent strings, either both are in the language or both are not in the language. Now that is obvious, right? Because two strings are equivalent if and only if on that string you go to the same state. Now that state may be final, in which case both X and Y are in the language, or that state delta hat of Q0X may be non-final, which is same as delta hat of Q0Y, which is non-final. So both X and Y are not in the language. So two equivalent strings, either both are accepted or both are rejected. It cannot be that, you know, there are two equivalent strings, but one is accepted and one is rejected. That cannot be the case. And this property is called, it has a complicated name. It refines the language R. Because our automaton had language R, this complicated word, this equivalence relation that we defined refines R, because all two equivalent words are either both in R or they are both out of R. That is what it means. And these are not difficult properties, but you should remember this. So this is refines R. And fourth thing is, you know, how many equivalence classes does our DFA, our equivalence relation have? One for every reachable state. Right? In our example, since there were, where is that example? We had 4 reachable states, we had 4 equivalence classes. So the number of equivalence classes is finite. When this equivalence relation has only finitely many equivalence classes, it is said to be of finite index. These are complicated names that mathematicians use because this kind of idea occurs again and again in mathematics. Okay, so basically the relationship, this machine equivalence relationship over words that we define has the following 4 properties. Firstly, it's an equivalence relation. It's a right congruence, which means equivalent words when extended by some letter will take you to only equivalent words. Okay. Third is two words are equivalent, then either both are accepted or both are rejected. That is called, it refines the language R, accepted by the automaton LA. So LA is same as R. Huh? I will use exchangeably LA and R. Okay. And finally, the number of equivalence classes is finite. So is that clear to you? We are getting little abstract. We are using some algebraic concept. So instead, from this machine, we have actually come up with how the set of words is partitioned, right? Yeah. Okay. Don't look at, there is a lot more in the slides than what we need, but this is the key part. So our relation, any relation, equivalence relation over word which satisfies these four properties. It's an equivalence relation, it's a right congruence, it refines R and is a finite index, has got a name. It's called Myhill-Needle relation, refining this language R that we have got. Okay. So what we can prove is that this machine equivalence that we define is a Myhill-Needle relation refining R. Big name, but basically these four properties hold. Okay. Just try to get the view. Basically, given an DFA, we can partition the set sigma star into equivalence classes like this. And these equivalence classes, will result in these properties. Okay. Now this is the machine equivalence over set sigma star, right? Maybe we should do. Okay, I want to do one more concept. All this is not required. Language induced equivalence. Okay. So given a DFA, I can define an equivalence which has those nice properties. It is called the Myhill-Needle relation. But there is another relation which I will define. And here I will not need any DFA recognizing R. Suppose I am directly given a language R. Okay. I don't care whether it's regular or not regular. I am just given this language R. So based on R, I am going to define a notion of equating two words. Those words may be in R, may not be in R, right? And I said that two words in sigma star are equivalent, that is language equivalent, provided for all Z's, if you extend X with Z, and if you extend Y with Z, both XZ and YZ will take you to R, or they will both keep you outside R. So R is the set of words you want to accept. So for all extensions of X and Y, you will accept those extensions, or you will reject both extensions. So either XZ will be accepted and YZ will also be accepted, or XZ will be rejected and YZ will also be rejected. And this property holds for all Z, in which case we say that X and Y are, right linear equivalent or R equivalent. Okay, this is for a given language R. So what you are given R subset of sigma star, we define this equivalence. Now this equivalence is a mathematical property and it's a little bit abstract. Yeah, it is also called the right linear equivalence, right? So this language induced equivalence is also called right linear equivalence. It has two names. Okay, and we want to see some examples before we see its property. So page after. Okay, so suppose you are given the following language. What language shall I do? A star A, right? Arbitrary odd number of A's. Okay, we want to check whether, let's say, single A is, this is my R, is R equivalent to AA. Is this the case? Where, in order to check that, what do I have to check? I have to check that for all Z, AZ belongs to R if and only if AAZ belongs to R. And I have to show this for all R. If this is all Z, if this is not the case, then these two are not equivalent. So do you think these two are equivalent, Arvind?
No, sir, these two are not equivalent for that.
Which,
Okay,
which
wait.
Z shall we choose? Which Z shall we choose to show they are not equivalent?
Okay, I didn't notice that we have changed the language. Give me a moment.
Hello?
Yeah, okay. My answer still stands. I mean, these two are not congruent because if you use a Z equal to A, then the right hand side will be accepted, but the left hand side
Right.
will not be
So
accepted.
Arvind says the following: if you extend the left hand side with a blue A, and if you extend the right hand side, which is A, with a blue A, then the left hand side is not in the language a blue A, right? So yeah, sorry, I should write the last this in blue. Blue A. Then this is in the language, belongs to R, but this does not belong to R, right? So these two cannot be equivalent. So they are not equivalent. Correct. What about A and AAA?
Those two are those two are what is that? Yeah, equivalent or
AA, right? What about AA and epsilon? What do you think?
yes, those two are congruent too.
Right. So we have this notion of congruence of words. Okay. And what are the congruence classes you are going to get? So what is the equivalence class of the word epsilon? What are all the words which will be equivalent to epsilon?
Any word with even number of A's.
So A star. And what will be the equivalence class of A?
The language or
Star A, right? And this, all the words belong to either this class or this class. So we can partition sigma star into two classes under this language induced equivalence. Okay. And we get these two classes. Is that clear to you? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we have this sigma star, or where sigma is A, and it is partitioned into two things, and this consists of A star, and this consists of A star, A star A, right? These are the two classes. So this rightly language induced congruence, where the language R is this, will partition, in this case partitioned into two classes, right? This is the idea. Now now let me take you back to that example that we had. What was the language accepted by this automaton? So Vinay, do you want to say? We had seen what was the language accepted by this automaton.
Sir, EE star and followed by A.
Right. So same language as what we saw in that other example, right?
Yeah.
A star A, right? Now here we had a DFA for that language which partitioned sigma star into 4 classes. Whereas in that, with that language induced equivalence, we partitioned sigma star into 2 classes. But, and you know, my language was equivalent to this equivalence class, right? So we have these different ways of partitioning sigma star to recognize the same language. Some come from machine, some come from this language induced equivalence. Okay? You see this? This is just an example. So, but the definition of language induced equivalence should be clear to you. This is this definition. And this equivalence has also got nice properties. Firstly, it's an equivalence relation. This is also this also has those 4 properties that we saw. It's a Myhill-Nenod relation. Why? Because it's an equivalence relation. You can say that this For any R, this is an equivalence relation. It is right congruent. You can easily prove that f says, R equivalent to y, then x is also R equivalent to y. So you can do a simple proof that it is right congruent. You want to, okay. So I will leave that proof to you as an exercise. It's a simple 3-line proof. Show that this equivalence relation that we defined is a right congruence. That is equivalent words. What you have to prove for this is if x is right equivalent, language equivalent to y for any language y implies that xa is language equivalent to ya, right? And it's not very difficult to prove given this definition. So you can do that proof yourself. Okay.
Sir, I have a question about the text that is given in the beginning of this slide.
Yeah, don't go into it. We are not doing that. It's important text, but for the moment, let's not go because we have little time and I want to finish this topic today. But maybe we can come back to it at the end. What was your question quickly?
Like, why would we want to refine the partition?
Because you saw, from the machine, we got four partitions, right? 4 classes.
Yes.
From the language index equivalence for the same language, we got 2 classes.
So refining is going from 2 to 4 or 4 to 2?
Refining is going from 2 to 4. You are breaking partitions into further partitions.
Right. So, I mean, or at least in previous classes, the goal was to reduce the number of DFAs.
So here also the goal is to reduce the number of partitions. So refinement is bad.
Yes. Okay.
Refinement is distinguishing more. Here we are distinguishing less. So this language equivalence is very good. It is somehow giving us fewer partitions. That is what we are going to claim.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Secondly, this right equivalence that we have, this language equivalence we have shown, is it also refines R. That is, it only equates strings in, so it has the following property. X is right equivalent to y implies X belongs to R if and only if Y belongs to R. This is an obvious property. This is the definition of when this relation refines R. It's a big word for this property. Now, why this property is true? Can anybody give me a simple 1-line argument? Given this definition of equivalence of R, why is this property true? Because these two are equivalent. Sorry, it's not by equivalence. It's one way. I'm sorry, I wrote it wrong. Why is this true? Well, you can choose, since this property is true for all Z, I can choose for Z epsilon. And I'll directly get this result. We are claiming that this is true and we have to prove this is true. Since this is true, the right hand side of this definition will be true. Now for Z, since this holds for all Z, it holds also for epsilon. And I get this by choosing that, right? Okay. So it refines R. This is the third property, right? These 3 properties hold. Depending on what my R is, I may get finitely many indices or I may get infinitely many equivalence classes. It depends on R. So we are going to do some example here. Okay. Okay, this slide we are not going to do. New page after. So consider the language A raised to n, B raised to n. Okay. N greater than equal to 0. This is my language R. So what are my R equivalence classes? Classes are like, what strings will be equivalent to each other? So firstly, all strings of the form. So I'll have classes of the form GK of the form A raised to K. Each of such string is in a different class. So there will be one class for the string of the form A raised to K. Then I will have another different set of classes which look like this. It will be A raised to n plus K, B raised to Okay, so consider all strings which look like this. That is excess of k a's over b. You know, those strings are there. There may be multiple strings here. Suppose there is a string a b, and there is a string. So this has got three excesses. Three excesses over. Okay, sorry, I'll make it bb. Right. So this has got two excesses. Suppose I have got string aa, and I have got epsilon, or AAA and B, right? AAA followed by B. I claim that these three strings are language equivalent. Why is that the case? Because both of these can be extended by two B's and you will get a language in the word. Similarly, this can also be extended by two B's and I'll get the language in the a word in the language. If I extend it by any other number of B's, both of them will not go to the language. So my claim is that this, for every different k you get a different class, and hk and hk minus 1 have got strings which are not equivalent. Similarly, gk and gk minus 1 are not equivalent, and then all the words which are not in gk and hk form the rest. They also form an equivalence class by themselves. So I've got, you know, for every k I've got infinitely many equivalence classes. Many language induced equivalence classes. So do you see that, you know, for some R's you will get infinitely many language induced classes, and for some R's you will get finitely many language induced classes. There was this other example where we got finitely many, two classes here for this R, which was regular. This language, which was not regular, gave you infinitely many classes, right? And in fact, this property is typical, and that property is actually the topic of this Myhill-Nerode theorem. Myhill-Nerode theorem gives you a way of checking whether a language is regular or not. It says that the following statements are equivalent. Now let's not look at the middle one. It's not so important. It says R is regular, that is R has a DFA. It is recognized by a DFA if and only if the language induced equivalence relation, you know, for this R has finitely many equivalence classes. It is a finite index. Okay, this is what this theorem says. And if a language induced equivalence relation has finitely many equivalence classes, then that R is guaranteed to be regular. So given a DFA, you know, it will have a language R, and we can construct its language induced equivalence, which will have finitely many classes. Now that we already did, because if R is regular, so how do we do proof of this? So do you see that the existence of a DFA and the fact that this language induced equivalence has finitely many equivalence classes are the same property? That is what this important theorem is claiming. And so what we do is, given an R, we calculate the number of equivalence classes that it induces. For this R, we got two classes, and hence it was regular. Of course, we knew it was regular because we had a regular expression. But if you just look at the set of words, then this gave rise to, you know, in the language induced equivalence, it gave rise to two classes, and hence it's regular. This gave rise to infinitely many classes, and hence this language is not regular. So this is another way of showing that languages are regular or not regular. Okay, but for that you have to work out what are the language induced equivalence classes. Okay, and that's sometimes little tricky. Okay, but the main theorem is this, that R is regular, that it is a DFA if and only if this language induced equivalence has finitely many equivalence classes. So this is the property. Any question about the property before we do the proof? So we already showed that 1 implies 3. If R is regular, it will have a DFA. And for that DFA, we define, let's say DFA is called A, DFA A. We define a machine equivalence A, And we already showed that that machine equivalence had finitely many indices, right? So machine equivalence had finitely many indices. We are now claiming that this language equivalence also will have finitely many indices. For that, I have got to prove the following. If X is machine equivalent to Y, okay, then X is R equivalent to Y. This is what I need to prove. That is, machine equivalence distinguishes more strings than my language induced equivalence. My language induced equivalence somehow keeps the equivalence classes as few as possible. A machine may have the same number of classes or may actually partition those classes into more classes. This is what I have to prove. So this is something to prove. Okay, and there's a simple 3-line proof. We are running out of time, so I will leave it to you to read in Cozen. Or maybe I can do the proof. You know, if X is equivalent, when is X is, and Y are machine equivalent? Delta hat, suppose the machine was delta and its start state was S. S on X is equal to delta hat of S on Y. Agreed? Now this will imply what? Delta hat of S on XZ will belong to final state if and only if delta hat of S on YZ will belong to final state, right? You see that? Because X and Y take you to the same state. After that, whatever Z you add, you will either wind up in a final state or you will not wind up in the final state. You will wind up in the same state. So this is true for all Z. And this, by the definition of this language induced equivalence, this is equivalent to this part is equivalent to X is right equivalent to Y. So this simple 2-step proof shows you that actually this right linear this language induced equivalence gives fewer equivalence classes than the machine induced equivalence, and both will define the same language R, right? So that is the proof of 1 implies 2. What about 2 implies 1? So I will add a page. 2 implies 1. So we are given this language induced equivalence, okay, R, right? And we know that this equivalence is of finite index. This is given to you of finite index. Okay, then we have to construct a machine, construct a DFA recognizing the language R from given this equivalence machine. So the way we construct it is the following. The set of states of the machine, so we will construct a machine Q, then sigma of course remains as it is. The transition relation will be called delta and the start state will be called S and the final states will be called F. So Q is what? Okay, I have it on a, but I'll write it here. It's okay. X such that X belongs to sigma star. So for every string, you find its equivalence class. There are finitely many. This equivalence relation is a finite index, so there will be finitely many equivalence class. So each equivalence class becomes a state of the machine. Secondly, my start state is the equivalence class of the empty word. Okay, my set of final states is all those equivalence classes where X belongs to the language R. Right? Here we have a DFA recognizing R, right? So this, and what is delta? Delta of an equivalence class of a string X on a letter A will go to equivalence class of XA. So this is how you construct the machine. And it's easy to show that this machine will recognize the language R. Okay, so what we get out of this theorem is actually a machine corresponding to this language induced equivalence, which will have as many states as the equivalence classes under this language induced equivalence, and this will be the fewest because any machine will have more classes than this. Any machine will partition the equivalence classes of this language induced equivalence into further classes. So we get a DFA with fewest number of states, and in fact we will get the minimal DFA. So this proves that not only can we given a finite index language induced equivalence, we can construct the minimal DFA for that language. This is how it works, and that is the power of Myhill-Nerode theorem. So Myhill-Nerode theorem says that firstly, this language induced equivalence is of finite index if language is regular, and otherwise it's of infinite index, and the number of equivalence classes there. You know, each equivalence class gives you a state and you get a DFA, which is the minimal DFA, the smallest DFA, which will recognize this language. That is what we have proved. Okay. And the one last remaining proof is the following, that, you know, here we need to find out what are the equivalence classes for the language induced equivalence. That is, we have to find out classes under this, right? And that can be a tricky job. In the previous lecture, we had done a state minimization algorithm where we were given a DFA for the language and we collapsed the states to get a smaller DFA, right? We got a collapsed DFA. So let the original DFA for the language be A and let the collapsed DFA in the previous class by state equivalence be called M. We had constructed this quotiented automaton M. That quotiented automaton defines its own equivalence, right? Machine equivalence. What we can show is that the language equivalence, language induced equivalence, and the equivalence obtained in the quotiented automaton is identical. There's a small, you know, 6-line proof in Cosen. I think I'm running out of time, so I'll leave you to read it. But this shows that Hofcroft's algorithm, which was quotienting the automaton, actually gives rise to the same equivalence classes as the language induced equivalence, and hence we are getting the minimum DFA. So here we have proved that Hofcroft's algorithm actually finds the minimum DFA for the language, and there cannot be any other DFA which is of smaller size which will recognize the same language. So is this clear? I know I went a little fast, but so this part of the proof you need to read from Cosen. But the important thing is to know that the quotienting algorithm that we define gives rise to the same automaton that we construct here from the language induced equivalence, and the language induced equivalence gives you an automaton with fewest number of states. So we get the minimum automaton. So this language in this Hofcroft's quotienting algorithm also finds the minimum automaton. This is what is the proof. And we have a test for whether a language is regular or not. Given a language R, we find the number of equivalence classes in its language induced equivalence. And if that number of equivalence classes is finite, then the language is regular. Otherwise, it is not regular. So this is the main topic. And I know today's talk was a little bit abstract. You will have to study it. Maybe we will have a tutorial where you can ask some questions, but you can treat Myhill-Nerode theorem as the advanced part of this course. Okay. And with this theorem, we come to the end of the study of finite state automata, at least the theory of finite state automata. So I think this is all I will do in finite state automata. There will be a quiz on firstly the state minimization algorithm, the Hofcroft's algorithm for minimizing a given DFA, and a quiz on pumping lemma. The quiz will cover pumping lemma and little bit of this language induced equivalence. Not too much detail, but you should be able to calculate the equivalence classes for a given language. Okay, you should, under this language induced equivalence relation. So these are the three things you will have to do. So I'll release a quiz, but with this we come to, let's say, an important part of our course, the theory of finite state automata. So I think I'll end with that. If there are any questions, please ask.
So just for like semantics, I mean, this is kind of the final thing that we wanted to show, right? then
Right.
call it a
Right.
lemma. I mean, like, it's also a theorem.
Oh, this is a theorem, definitely. It is called Myhill-Nerode theorem, and it shows that there exists a unique minimum DFA for equivalent to every DFA, and every regular language has a minimum DFA, which is computed by computing its equivalence relation, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is what is sometimes called more algebraic treatment of machines, you know, because we are dealing in terms of these equivalence relations and their right congruence and properties like this. So this is called the algebraic approach to automata theory. And actually this approach in mathematics has got, much more development, and there are whole journals, which cover advancements using this kind of ideas. Okay. It also relates to certain part of mathematics called semi-group theory. But all that is not necessary. We just need to see that this gives us a different test for checking whether a language is regular or not, and it gives us a way of finding the minimal DFA. Right? Yeah, Arvind?
Yes, sir.
Anything?
I mean, not really.
I
Like,
know you will have...
just
Go ahead.
no, I wanted to clarify about the quiz.
About the quiz. The quiz is about state minimization. We didn't have a quiz on that.
No,
Okay.
sir. I mean, like, is it going to be you're going to allot a class to this, or is this going to be over the weekend?
Oh, it is going to be over the weekend. It will be multiple choice.
No, because
Just
you
to
had
see that you have
mentioned
understood these concepts.
yes, sir. You had mentioned that we'll have like a 20% quiz or something because
So we will have a major quiz which will cover all of DFA part after this thing, which will not be multiple choice. It will be a long answer thing.
yes,
Okay.
sir. So do you have like a tentative date for that?
Give me a few days to decide. We are a little bit running out of time, but not certainly in the next week.
Okay, sir.
And I will ask you people to see if it is convenient. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the topic of finite state automata. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So let us, if there are any other questions. If there aren't, I will stop the recording.